Well, it's always a pleasure to drive the Monte Carlo racetrack, and we're here ahead of the Grand Prix, so the circuit is pretty much defined. And to go in what was a racing car from the beginning of the 1900s, the remarkable thing for me is that, of course, the technology is completely different to a modern Grand Prix car, but the experience is still the same simple pleasure. You have to select the gear, you have to go, and you have to feel the car. And this is a great reminder that it doesn't matter what period you're racing. And in the case of me, my Formula 1 career is behind me, and in the case of doing it with Mick, his Formula 1 career is ahead of him. But the journey, in terms of the period of which you race, is still the same challenge. It's about competitive relationships with the guys you race against. It's about getting the best out of the car and your team, and it's about trying to be the best version of yourself. Well, the car, of course, is not as simple to drive as maybe a modern racing car, but what is interesting is that, you know, I'm at the other end of my career, Mick is at the beginning of his career. His commitment to speed is maybe a little bit higher than mine. He was driving more quickly than I was driving, but the basis of being a driver, it doesn't matter if you're 18 or if you're 46. A driver is a driver. The experience is something different, but you still need to have mechanical sympathy, you still need to understand and have a relationship with the vehicle, because the driver has to be like a hand and glove relationship with the car to be at the very best. We look back on that time and think they were crazy, but if they were alive today and would look at our time, they would think we were crazy. So I think it's very much a case of living for your time. But I think the fascination with these classic cars and what makes this story, you know, authentic and enjoyable is this is a racing car from the period, and it was a winning racing car. And it only came to be because of human endeavor, whether that was the designers or the mechanics. And in the end, the heroes of the period were the drivers. So we need this relationship between the machinery and man, or humans, to give us this sporting context. And you know, for Mick, at 18, he might look at this car and feel very disconnected, but the reality is, you know, he is connected with his period because he's a racing driver and this car was raced by a racing driver. I am very proud to be part of the Mercedes journey. You know, I was able to win Grand Prix with Mercedes Power. In the museum in Stuttgart, I have my name on the wall as one of the winning drivers. And as a Mercedes fan, anyway, before I drove for them, to have this realization of being part of that journey is, I think, a reason to be proud and also to be thankful, because without Mercedes and Benz deciding to design a car, and without this whole journey of motorsport and automotive production, then we wouldn't have the pleasure we're having today. So yeah, I am proud to be associated with Mercedes, and even if I hadn't raced for them, I was always a fan because my father bought Mercedes. I think that the Mercedes brand is so strong now and so you know, intrinsically linked to modern society. It doesn't matter if it's through the Smart brand or whether it's through AMG at the other end of the journey. There's something for everybody. And depending on the phase you are in your life, there's a car and a category that fits you in that journey. So I don't think we need to worry about the next 120 years. The hard work was the first 120 years. Of course, the brand will continue to be defined by the people that work in the company. But in the end, if they stay true to the ingenuity of the original founding fathers, if they create these works of engineering art which make people excited, then the future will be, I'm sure, successful. Power is relative to overall performance, and 40 horsepower in the Simplex feels like 400 horsepower because the car is very simple. It doesn't generate downforce, of course. It's very raw in its selecting of gear, or when you brake, you have two brakes, one on the gearbox, one on the rear axle. It's another way of thinking when you drive, but the wonderful thing is you feel that your influence, what you put in, you get out. And as a racing driver, this is also the case. It doesn't matter if it's a modern Grand Prix car. The more you put in, the more you get out.
Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing.